So, hidden talents, some stuff is starting to happen. They're out at the arcade. And I want you to think about, what has Martin discovered? How does this change things? This is going to really become apparent as I read this chapter to you. And I wonder where it's going to take us. The glimmer of truth. I'm not a bad game player. I do best at the driving games, but I do okay on the other stuff too. And I like pinball. Torchy, Cheater, and Lucky were all pretty good. But Flitch came close to being amazing. I started out playing Road Revenge. Flitch was standing next to me taking on one of the new fighting games with the really cool graphics. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed he was undefeated after I'd already gone through $1. That got my attention. In the next hour, I saw him roll up incredibly high scores at almost every game he played. I could barely believe that someone who was so jumpy could play games so well. He's got great reflexes, Torchy said as we watched Flitch blast his way through level after level on Smash TV. They had a lot of the latest stuff at the arcade, but Flitch seemed to like the old games as much as the new ones. He got to go from something brand new like Shalaline Annihilator to something ancient like Pole Position, Frogger, or Centipede. I stuck with old games since most of them were still just a quarter. I didn't want to run through Lucky's money too quickly. I even played a game of skeet ball for old time's sake, hitting just enough of a score to win one ticket. My sister and I used to play it when we were little. I usually gave her all the tickets I won so she could save up for good prizes. I shoved the ticket in my pocket, figuring I could send it to her as a joke. I beat my old high score on Xenon, one of my favorite pinball machines, for a moment. As I stood there just drinking in the great sounds that washed over me from all the machines, life seemed absolutely fine. Flitch stepped away from Smash TV and went to one of the all-time pinball classics, Pinball Deluxe. Want to play a 2-player game? Torchy asked me, pointing to NBA Jam. I shook my head. Right then, I just wanted to watch Flitch. There was something odd about the way he used the flippers. Guess I'll play pinball, Torchy said, stepping up next to Flitch and feeding some change to Excalibur. I think if I'd just watched Flitch, I might never have noticed what was going on. But with Flitch and Torchy standing side by side, I began to see the difference in the way they played. After a while, I started to understand what Flitch was doing. As the first suspicions grew, a shiver of excitement tingled across my flesh. Beneath the thrill of discovery was a tinge of fear. Even though I was sure I'd figured out what was happening, I didn't quite believe it. A couple of minutes before midnight, the lights blinked on and off. Closing time, the guys behind the counter shouted. We'd better get going, Torchy said. It was just as well. I was down to my last 3 quarters. Here, I said, handing them to Lucky. Keep 'em, he told me. I felt funny about that. I don't need. Keep the quarters, okay? He glared at me, his hands clenched in fists. Yeah, sure. I wasn't going to get into a fight over it. If he wanted me to have the quarters that badly, I'd keep 'em. We headed out. I watched Flitch carefully on the way back to the school. He didn't do anything unusual, but I decided to keep an eye on him. We got inside without any trouble. Much to my surprise, climbing up was a lot less scary than climbing down. As Lucky hauled in the ladder and stuck it under his bed, my eyes homed in on the open closet. Wow! I couldn't help gasping. There was no way the door could close. The closet was crammed with stuff. I stared at stacks of cardboard boxes overflowing with an amazing variety of loot. Pens, eyeglasses, tape recorders, hats, wallets, all kinds of small toys. I saw at least a dozen baseballs, most pretty scuffed, but one that looked brand new, a bunch of golf balls, tons of tennis balls, and a jar full of coins. Found 'em, Lucky said. I didn't steal 'em. All of that? I walked over to the boxes. Yeah, all of that, especially around home on the weekends. His voice grew tense. He moved a step closer to me. I found it all. Finders keepers. Great. I held my breath, hoping he wasn't going to get angrier. Lucky smiled. Go ahead. Take anything you want. I looked at him, unsure what to say. He nodded. Really? I figured he'd get upset if I refused. I reached towards the top box. It felt funny, almost like I was stealing. But Lucky started to look tense again, so I just grabbed the first thing my hand touched. Thanks, this is great, I said. I looked down and discovered I was holding one of those big plastic clips girls used in their hair. Nice choice, Martin, Flinch said. Maybe we can get you a dress to go with it. He started laughing and exchanged a hand slap with Torchy. Hey, I'm going to send it to my sister, I said. I shoved the stupid thing in my pocket and left the room. Sometimes Flitch just didn't know when to keep his mouth shut. That was fun, wasn't it? Torchy asked after we slipped back into our room. Yeah, thanks for letting me come. I thought about telling him what I'd seen, but I decided to wait until I had real proof. It wasn't as simple as I'd hoped. After spending most of Saturday trying to study Flitch without being obvious about it and learning absolutely nothing, I realized it might be better to get more information first. So I decided to do some research. If I was right, everything I knew about the world was about to change. Everything I knew about the whole universe, for that matter. After breakfast Sunday morning, while all my classmates were hanging out and relaxing or spending quality time at home with their parents, I went to the school library down on the first floor. The librarian, I think it was the same guy who taught the history lecture, seemed shocked to see someone, or annoyed that I had disturbed his nap. I'm not sure which. Either way, I had the place pretty much to myself. I wasn't exactly sure where to start, so I wandered around reading the titles of books on the shelves. I knew I could look something up on the computer catalog that listed all the books in the library, but I didn't even know what to look under. It was like trying to find a word in the dictionary when you didn't know how to spell it, but at least the library didn't have as many books as the dictionary had words. What's cool here in Hidden Talents is that this is obviously a book, or the author wrote it before there was Google. So there aren't computers, and he knows how to use a card catalog, which libraries don't even really have much of anymore. And looking up words in dictionaries, huh? So, it's gone old school on you. Can I help you? The librarian asked after I'd scanned the shelves for 10 minutes or so. He walked over to me, but stopped several feet away as if I might be contagious. I guess it drove him crazy watching me search the shelves like someone trying to find the right variety of soup in the supermarket. No thanks, I'm just looking. He gave me that special smile teachers use with students who aren't very bright. Well, if you tell me what you're looking for, I can help you find it. I shrugged. I won't know what I'm looking for until I find it. Suit yourself, but call me if you need help. I will. I resumed my search. There was a lot of interesting stuff. There were some books about dinosaurs and tanks and outer space. All the books looked pretty worn. The rip covers were wrapped in yellowing plastic. A lot of them were patched with tape that had turned stiff and brittle. I flipped open a couple of the books and checked the dates. Most of them were written years ago. I guess an old book is just as good as a new one if it has the facts you need. But at first, I didn't see anything that would do me any good. Then, I got warm. I spotted a book called A Skeptical Look into the World of the Unexplained. That seemed worth a shot. I took it to one of the tables and started flipping through the pages. The guy who wrote the book talked about all kinds of unexplained phenomena, like ghosts and stuff, and he tried to explain them in normal terms. Some of the unexplained stuff he'd investigated was obviously fake. He'd caught people making thumping sounds and pretending it was a ghost, or using hidden springs to make objects jump off a shelf. There were all kinds of frauds out there. Some of them were after money, and some just wanted attention. It was interesting in the fakes. The most important thing I got from the book was a list of the words for what I wanted to learn about. I'd brought a notebook with me. I wrote down the words: clairvoyance, telepathy, telekinesis, and several others. Then I went to the computer. It was an old piece of junk with a green screen, and the software was pretty lame, but it had all the books in the library on file so you could search for titles and subjects. I noticed the librarian giving me a smug look like he'd won some sort of contest. I ignored him. I searched the computer for the words I'd found. There weren't any books on the subjects. That didn't surprise me. It wasn't the sort of thing a school library would have. So I tried the encyclopedia. Bingo! I found short articles under several of the words, and I learned a couple more words from the articles, especially the part at the end where they say "see also." I added those words to the bottom of my list. After I'd looked at everything I could find in the encyclopedia, I took those new words and went back to the computer. This time, I actually found 2 books listed. As much as I hate to admit it, I was starting to have fun in the library. If I told the guys that I was enjoying myself, I'd be kidded without mercy. They'd probably start calling me Bookman or Word Boy or something like that. I certainly wasn't a brain, and I didn't think of myself as the kind of kid who studies stuff or learns things just for fun. But this was almost as good as a game. And I'd done it all by myself. I'd gone in there with little more than a suspicion and ended up learning a lot more than I'd expected. As I sat back in the chair at the library thinking about all I'd read and what I suspected, I realized that there was an easy way to get the proof I needed, and I could do it before the end of the day. Hey, Marty, guess what? I think Dad misses you. Actually, I think he misses having you to yell at. So he's been yelling at Mom. She doesn't yell back, of course, but she's been getting even by burning dinner. How's it going out there? I hope you're getting better meals than I am. I think it's time I learned to cook. Your marvelous sister, Terry. Wow, his family is special. I'm going to stop there and just let you digest all the little pieces of information there. And I wonder what he's going to discover for us. I think our book, at almost halfway through, is about to get very, very interesting. Have a good day. See you tomorrow. Bye.